Let's talk a little bit about the big, beautiful bill, as Donald Trump.
Triple B.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So in general terms, it guts Medicaid. It cuts credits in friendly.
How does it gut Medicaid?
Well, you just got to look at the bill. Have you read it?
I haven't read the whole bill, but I mean, I've seen the highlights from the bill. My understanding is that it curbs Medicaid, certainly.
Well,
but doesn't gut it. It requires people. It takes Medicaid from illegal aliens, which they shouldn't have access to. It puts certain work requirements on some of the welfare. I mean, we need to. We'll continue. Tell me what else is in the bills, and we can.
Well, in some states, up to 67% of Medicaid benefits will be cut. So, yes, I would consider 67% gutting Medicaid in some states. It also jacks up taxes on universities. It eliminates a tax on gun silencers. We know how much gun violence we have in this country. Obviously, MAGA Republicans want to do nothing about that. In my personal opinion, and by the way, there's a lot of MAGA Republicans out there that behind closed doors did not want to vote for this bill. And even some publicly, the few that have spoken against it, and some of them still voted for it because they knew that if they voted against it, Donald Trump would go after them. I think that's cowardly. And if you want to talk about, the deficit and conserving money in Doge, look, the bottom line here, David, is that in the next 1 to 2 years, it's going to raise the debt ceiling by $5 to $6 trillion. That's not conserving anything. That's making it worse.
That's according to the, what are they called? There's a group, I can't think of it right now off the top of my head, but some estimates, it reduces the deficit by $2 trillion. And then the House Budget Committee, whatever that's called, they estimated it could increase the deficit by $6 trillion. They don't know. At the end of the day, we can't keep doing the same thing and expect something different to occur. And under every president, I think probably since Clinton, the deficit has just gone up and up and up, and the debt ceiling has gone up and up and up. And we have to take bold action now to make a difference. Now, people say they're gutting Medicaid, they're gutting the Social. Remember, for the longest time, they're gutting Social Security. They didn't do anything with Social Security. But at the end of the day, we have to start making meaningful reforms to our social welfare programs, because if we don't, they're not going to be there. So I think these are meaningful, well thought out reforms that need to happen. And regardless of who's doing it, I know we could look at the government as being, well, they're doing it, so we're going to sit on our hands. The Democrats could have contributed to this bill, but they sat on their hands and didn't do it. Yes, you're right. It barely passed, one Republican vote away from it not passing, or at least being a tie. But Democrats, this thing could have passed 70% if the Democrats wanted to engage, but instead they sat on their hands and are like, we'll just blame Republicans for everything that goes wrong with it. Well, that's not a way to govern either.
Because they don't agree with almost everything in the bill.
They can provide input other than just
they have.
Resist.
They have. They don't want to cut Medicaid. They've been very
you have to cut it. You have to.
Okay,
you can't just keep doing. You
have
talk about the deficit and the debt ceiling. If we don't cut Medicaid, what happens to that program?
So do we have to give the biggest tax breaks and loopholes to CEOs of Fortune 500?
No, this was the largest middle-class tax break probably in American history. And the Democrats, I thought, likes tax breaks for the middle class. This is going to give up to $11,000 in wage increases to people. And it's going to provide the largest middle class, make permanent the middle class tax increases that Trump put in place in 2016, that everybody, even your viewers in the comments, benefited from Trump's tax cuts. These are middle-class tax cuts.
So you're saying Donald Trump helped the middle class when it came to taxes more than the top 1%?
Well, everybody benefits in top 1%, middle class.
Who benefited more?
Ask somebody in the middle class who paid less taxes. Listen, I'm middle class. I pay less taxes thanks to Donald Trump's tax treatment. So I benefited from it.
Okay, but I'm not saying whether you benefited from it or not. That wasn't my question.
You said, does the middle class benefit more than the 1%?
Who gave bigger tax breaks to the rich or middle class? What did Donald Trump do there?
Well, but the question is nuanced, because if you take just by a percentage, the top 1% pays the most taxes in the country.
Not a higher percentage. Not a higher.
But if you gave a billionaire the same tax rate as 100,000 heir, the 20% is going to be way more for a billionaire. So you can't just compare apples to apples. It's not on a percentage.
So you're telling me that somebody who makes $40,000 a year should pay a higher taxes than someone who makes $1 billion a year?
Are you talking about a total tax obligation or a tax percentage?
I'm talking about the percentage of taxes that's taken out of your paycheck. Are you telling me that somebody making $40,000 a year should be paying just as high, if not more, on taxes for a percentage than somebody that makes $1 billion a year, like a Jeff Bezos or an Elon Musk?
Well, So breaking this down on a common sense basis, if somebody's making $40,000 a year and they're paying 7% tax, I think somebody making $40,000 a year pays about 1% tax, if anything, at this point. But let's just assume for a second they're paying, when you take out the standard deduction, that pretty much eliminates somebody at that tax bracket. But assuming they pay 7%. And then you take up somebody who earned $1 million and they're paying 7%. 7% of $1 million is a ton of money versus 7% of $40,000. And so if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, is that the top 1% getting a tax cut and somehow the middle class getting a tax cut, if the percentage is higher at the top 1% than the middle class, this doesn't count as a tax cut for the middle class. If you look at it by the percentages, rich people are always going to benefit or suffer from a higher or lower percentage because you're dealing with bigger numbers.
The point that I was trying to make, and I think the point I'm making is a simple one, is that if you're making $40,000 a year or even $100,000 a year, you shouldn't be paying a higher percentage than someone that's a billionaire. I think most people would agree with me on that. And I think the people that don't agree are the very wealthy people and the people that surround themselves at Mar-a-Lago with Donald Trump.